Today we're doing the Escapade DLC. You looked up, noticing the sun was finally setting. You'd been trying to delay the end of the day for as long as possible. The evening breeze tickled your nose as you sat on your front porch, munching on fresh watermelon slices. I know, I'm gonna miss 13-year-old Cove too, you know. There's nothing wrong with saying that. He's super cute right now, and he's hot too. You know, it's the developer's fault for having the art of Cove be so sexy when he's 13. Like, I didn't make it like that, you know? They did. This, you know, it's not my fault. You were eating it just because the watermelon was a summer tradition. It's just okay. I don't like watermelon either. You were debating on whether or not you should eat another slice. It was an alright sweet snack, but you were still content from dinner. Yes, Cove, would you like me to turn around? Would you like to put your hands on my pussy? You turned to look at Cove. You had both been sitting in comfortable silence for a while now. He sat next to you, close enough for your shoulders to touch. He was happily absorbed in his thoughts and his own slice of watermelon. Chuckling, you watched as his face twisted in discomfort. He had to stop chewing to spit a seed into the bush. I bet I can spit a seed farther than you. Immediately, you shoved the majority of what was left of your watermelon slice into your mouth, just to get a seed to prove your point. As soon as you could, you sent that seed sailing into the middle of the street. Them eyebrows are not cute? Cove's eyebrows? How dare you? Did you see that, Cove? Cove burst into laughter that slowed to a wide grin. You could tell he was equal parts surprised and impressed. Can you do that again? I didn't see where it landed. Of course I can. You popped another seed into your mouth and focused on where the last one landed. Setting the seed free, you got it to go even further this time.
Not bad.
Not bad? You had Cove chuckling again. It was taking a lot of focus to stay looking serious and not break into laughter yourself. Cove is a spit, not swallow boy? Oh girl, come on, he would swallow for me. I'd like to see you try. I will. Cove took in a mouthful of watermelon, face grimacing when he had the seed. Ugh, he has so much seed in his mouth. Ugh, soon to be mine. Then his expression morphed into a focused look and he sent the seed flying, landing in a similar spot to yours. Wait, you got to do too. I need another try. He spoke before you could even comment on his non-victory. His determination got you laughing. He quickly sent another closer to where your second one landed. Seems we're evenly matched for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for now. For the next several minutes, you both kept carving seeds from your slices and giggling at the ridiculousness of the competition. Eventually a truce was called, and you both went back to eating the neglected watermelon flesh.
I
wonder if I'll have another slice after this one. That one is your third already. Is that bad? It tastes really good. Let's see, you bumped him with your shoulder and you knocked the most. Why am I being so mean? No, it's alright. Why? He can have as much watermelon as he wants. It isn't super filling and there's still a lot left. Why not? Alright, that's all I need. He picked up a fourth slice with confidence and looked at you. His smile stretched ear to ear. A little while later, Cove flinched, making a confused sound. He slowly put his current slice down on the plate next to him. Are you okay? Yeah. He stood up, head tilted back to look at the sky. His feet took him to the middle of the street. Did you notice anything? What do you mean?
Huh.
I thought I felt a raindrop. The sun's still out. You put your watermelon slice down and hopped off your front step. Immediately, you felt a tap of water on the crown of your head, making you yelp. You're right. Cove was still staring up at the sky, and you watched as he began blinking more rapidly. When he finally turned in your direction, his face was bemused. It's a shun shower. It seemed crazy, but soon you couldn't avoid the drops that began increasing into a light shower. Booming with laughter, Cove picked off his shoes towards his front door and reveled in the moment. You were excited. You closed your eyes and threw your head back, letting the rain shower over you. The cool drops felt so right after the warmth of the day. Feeling energized, you ran over to Cove and laughed at how soaked he already was. Not that he cared, because he was busy spinning in the middle of the street. Spin faster! He complied. It was only when Cove started to slip and his laughter turned into hiccups that he dizzily stopped. Just as the sprinkling started, it stopped and left you dripping with the smell of wet asphalt and soil tickling your nose. Cove caught your eyes. Running a hand through his wet hair, combing it back, he frowned. Look at you and your wet shirt.
Aww.
It's over. The drops of rain clinging to his face almost could have been mistaken for tears. He sounded that disappointed. Well, it was fun. Yeah, it's so cool that it happened. You then looked over at your door and sighed. You knew Ma wasn't going to be happy to see you trailing water into the house. Cove rubbed his arm awkwardly. You must have been thinking the same thing because he watched you sympathetically.
It's okay.
You can dry out at my house if you want. My parents won't mind. Oh my god, can I take a shower with you in your house too? You're the sweetest guy I know. Thanks. It's not a big deal. It is. I could already hear my ma's cries over my wet footsteps being all over the halls. Yeah, it would be bad to put a damper on the day. He chuckled at his little pun. Cove let you inside and you stayed close to him. We have a ton of spare towels. I just gotta dig them out of the hall closet. I think I want to wear his clothes. I want to borrow some clothes from you too. Cove didn't have any of the towels yet, but he came back into eye shot so you could see him stare at you flatly and roll his eyes. Haha. Don't you think my clothes might be kind of big? I'm not joking. Let me wear your... I'm just trying to wear my boyfriend's shirt. Is that so wrong? He raised an eyebrow and a tiny frown paired with a blush appeared on his face.
I mean,
if you're serious, I'm just gonna dry my stuff off, but I could get something for you. Thanks, Cove. With that, Cove disappeared and returned in no time. He wasn't making much eye contact, but had towels in hand, plus what seemed to be one of his pajama shirts. If he thinks he's ever getting that shirt back, he is so dead wrong. We're gonna use that when we're pleasuring ourselves tonight. We're gonna be breathing in his shirt. It was a bright pink color with a dark brown seashell pattern all over. You were certain it looked great on him. So, well, here it is. I hope that works. Nice, thanks. You accepted both a towel and the shirt. You wrapped the cloth around your neck temporarily and took a trip to his bathroom to change. Can I also have a pair of underwear, Cove? You like that fluffy shirt, girl? Well, thanks. The shirt was old but very soft. You already felt more comfortable just thinking about having it on instead of your current damp attire. You left your shirt over the shower curtain rod to dry, patted yourself down with the towel, and slipped Cove's shirt on. You wrapped your arms around your torso. The change didn't completely fix your predicament, but it was definitely an improvement. Even if it was kind of an off fit, you could make it work. And you couldn't deny it was a little bit thrilling to wear a piece of his clothing. You almost couldn't believe it was true. Not wanting to keep Cove waiting, you promptly returned to the living room. He looked up to greet you after hearing you come back down the hall. How'd it go? Is it good? It looks good. What? Really? He chuckled a broken laugh, unsure of what the proper thing to say about this kind of situation was. Keeping eye contact was even more of a challenge for him than before. I think so. You wear it well. I can barely tell it's not really yours and that it's mine. You got the impression that just as you felt some excitement in wearing his clothes, he was having a similar reaction to seeing you in it. Thanks, Cove.
You're welcome.
A sudden call caught both of your attentions. I thought I heard voices. Cove's mom strolled into the living room with a curious grin.
Huh?
What happened here? You're both wet. I'm always wet for your son, Mrs. Well, actually, I don't know what her last name is right now. It's not Holden. I don't know. Mrs. Kyra. I mean, I don't think it's Holden. She divorced Cliff. There was a shun shower. Badass. Cove smiled back at his parent. We came inside to dry off. My moms don't want me going inside my house when I'm wet.
Right.
So I told Joseph to come back here. That was very sweet of you, baby. She ruffled Cove's wet hair and laughed at the drops of water that shook off. Then a light came to Kyra's eyes.
What do you think?
I have an idea. Why don't we go for a drive? It has to beat standing around the house, and you'll air dry in no time. Cove only offered a shrug and a bent smile to his mom. He looked at you for a real answer. Let's do it. Why not? Fun. This'll be good. Kyra pulled out her cell phone from her pocket to call your moms. They had swapped numbers early in the summer.
See you soon.
Head out to the garage. I'll meet you there in just a minute.
Sorry.
Sorry, my mom can be so pushy. She gets some idea in her head and that's what she does. That's okay. Thanks for letting me come. I didn't do anything. That wasn't true at all, but you let him get away with that. He reminds you of the guy you're talking to and trying to be his BF? What, Cove does? Girl, get that D. Come on. Cove led you to the car and Kyra wasn't too far behind.
Okay.
Okay, into the back, you two. Once the three of you were situated inside, Once you were three of you were situated inside, Kyra started and drove it out of the residential area. When she hit a main road, the car sped up and she rolled back the windows down all the way.
Hey!
What? Cove started laughing as he kept trying in vain to keep his hair from flying into his eyes too much. Meanwhile, you closed your eyes as the wind whipped against your wet clothes. Well, how? We got a new shirt, so them's not wet. I said this drive was going to be good for getting air dried. Yeah, but I didn't agree to this much air. Cove tried pressing the window button, but nothing happened. His eyebrows furrowed in frustration.
No way!
You disabled the back? Sorry, can't hear you. Smiling deviously, Kyra turned on the radio and tuned it up to be heard over the wind. You danced in your seat to the music. This song is so good! You danced as much as you could while being strapped into the seat, treating the open windows as though they were some kind of wind machine for a performance. Pants still wet? Our pants are always wet. Cove shook his head at you until he cracked a half smile. Slowly he relaxed and bopped a little to the beat of the song himself. What is this? And then something struck the side of your leg. Several papers were freed from under the car's seats and were blown about. Oh, they can't go out the windows. Cove began haphazardly reaching around the space to try and get it all back under wraps. Amused, you helped frantically. You jumped to his aid immediately, trying to snatch up every single paper crashing around within your reach. As much as you both caught fistfuls, there was no stopping a few that got sucked out the windows. Cove gasped. Mom, close the windows. Kyra offered no response other than a chuckle. She kept driving, but both of you had sour looks at that girl. Close the windows I'm assuming this is his schoolwork or something that's getting lost. We got most of them. I know, thanks. The sun set completely, and at that Kyra rolled up the... I love how she didn't even care. We're losing our garbage, we're losing all our schoolwork, and she's just like, ha! Like, what? Kyra? The sun set completely, and at that Kyra rolled up the windows. Cove let out a big sigh and released the random bits of paper he had in his fist. My mom is crazy. He ran a hand through his windblown hair and laughed with a bit of exasperation. You felt good? You didn't know what was happening anymore? You felt good. The evening had really turned out to be more interesting than you were expecting. Grinning, you were happy with your odds with whatever else happened next. Cove watched you with interest until his focus was taken by a new comment from his mom. I bet you're not feeling damp anymore. No, but now I feel tricked. Let's side with Cove. Yeah, you didn't tell us you'd trap us like that. My bad. Kyra continued driving. The radio volume was adjusted for the closed windows, and everyone was sitting more comfortably. Kyra lowered the sound even more after, pulling into a red light. She took the chance to turn around. You caught her coy smirk.
So?
Does anyone know what we drove past during the dry cycle? I'm not sure I want to. A movie theater. Okay, most places have one somewhere. It isn't that late, you know. We can probably still catch a show.
What?
Really, Mom? We don't even know what'd be playing.
Come on!
That's what makes it fun. Heck yeah. Both of you? He seemed hesitant. You gave him a smile and Cove eased up a bit. Don't worry, Cove. We can have a lot of fun in the movie theater. I know this cool trick where if you cut a hole in the bottom of a popcorn bucket and I put the bucket on your lap, we can have a lot of fun. You'll see. Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating impulsive behavior every day, but it's important to seize the moment when you can. We might never have another night like this. And don't worry, Joseph. I said I'd watch over you for the night. Not just 10 minutes or so. I'll put your parents in the loop about hitting the movies as soon as we get there.
That's,
I didn't bring any shoes. I'm not wearing any either. You lifted up your foot and wiggled your toes so Cove could see. What are we doing? Giving a foot show? Gotta subscribe to my OnlyFans for that. How are we gonna go inside barefoot? I don't know.
It's alright.
We'll sneak through quick. No one will notice. You can do it just this once. You bounced in your seat excitedly that it was actually going to happen. Kyra was right. You never got to do stuff like this. Kyra drove into the theater parking lot and shut the engine off. With the unbuckling of her seatbelts, she ushered you and Cove out. Despite being hesitant to leave, once outside, Cove burst into a sprint towards the cinema. You were right along with him. The tarmac was still wet from before and cold to stand on with bare feet. Inside, you noticed there were no lines. All the current shows had already started. Kyra paid that no mind and strode up towards the counter with some words of encouragement. A third of the running time is ads these days. We haven't missed anything. Meanwhile, Cove stood next to you awkwardly. He shifted from one foot to the other and constantly kept looking around. His shady behavior would have made him much more likely to get caught than standing... His shady behavior would have made it much more likely to get caught than standing still would have, if there were more people around to really notice. What the... Y'all nasty as... Oh. It was pretty goofy. You consoled him, you teased him, you complained with him, you kept it quiet. You teased him. You're being the most obvious rule breaker in the world right now. Sorry, I don't do this all the time. You definitely break rules all the time. Relax, as long as you act like nothing's wrong, no one's gonna suspect anything. I'm doing that, and I'm barefoot too. Should I be worried that you're so confident about getting away with things? Maybe. Eliciting a sigh of relief out of you, Kyra returned with the tickets in hand. She quickly herded you and Cove towards the shower room. The showing room. Shower room. I'm so sorry for the little hiccup, but hold on. We've almost made it home free. Once we sit down, it'll be smooth sailing. The lights were already off in the showing room, but the movie hadn't started yet. The upcoming movie trailers were still playing.
Aha!
Yes! Keeping her volume in a hushed tone, Kyra couldn't help but burst with excitement over your luck. You followed her down the walkway until she spotted open seats in the middle-ish of the area of the theater. Kyra pointed at the seats, looking over her shoulder at you and Cove waiting for input. Cove nodded and you decided to give her a thumbs up and she led the way. When you reached your seats, Kyra sighed contentedly. Cove gave a sigh of his own and lifted his feet to sit cross-legged instead of keeping them down on the floor. He then leaned over and whispered to you.
So...
Do you have any idea what the movie is? No, I didn't hear the name or anything when your mom brought us the tickets. Oh boy, well how'd you even find the movie, this theater? Didn't you have to find it by name? After a couple more previews, the main event began. It dawned on you quickly that it was a horror film. One about a group of students being haunted by a dangerous ghost. You were psyched. You were terrified. The movie was only started and you're already petrified. At first I was afraid, I was petrified. So that was perfect. Glancing over at Cove, you noticed that he looked less than thrilled with the movie. He bit down on his bottom lip and stared at the screen with trembling eyes. Cove had never been a fan of ghosts or intentionally frightening things. That was something you learned about him early on. You remained still, you tapped Cove on the shoulder to get his attention. You angled your body, you grabbed hold of his hand. Your fingers wrapped tight around his and he jumped slightly at the unexpected touch. But his expression softened when he peeked at you out of the corner of his eyes. He gave your hand a squeeze to silently voice support. That made you feel good. Sometimes the other people in the theater screamed or jeered or clapped, depending on what was happening. Your heart was pounding in your chest when the movie finally came to an end. The main character resolved the hauntings, but in a dark conclusion, they didn't make it out alive. You stayed to let the credits roll and for the theater to clear out. Then it was time to head back to the car. Both you and Cove took the same seats in the back of the car again. Even though it was late, Kyra was exuding an upbeat, cheerful energy. What a great flick!
I guess.
It wasn't so bad, in the end. You enjoyed it, baby? No, I mean, it's hard to explain. I got really tense, and I guess that's the point of horror stuff. But I kinda don't want to have to feel like that. Now that it's all over, though, it was sort of cool to do.
Fantastic.
That's so great! Joseph, how are you feeling? It was awesome. Kyra smiled at that. I still can't believe they died. It's nice when things aren't all obvious and you really don't know how it'll end until you see it, but I wanted it to go better. I saw it coming. No way. A lot of horror things have endings like that. You and Cove spent the rest of the car ride absorbed in conversation about the movie. So, who's hungry? You were surprised when you realized Kyra didn't drive you home, but to a drive-thru burger restaurant instead. Why not? That's the spirit, get whatever you want. Oh, gotta get mozzarella sticks, sis. Mozzarella sticks. Honestly, maybe a spicy chicken sandwich. And maybe some onion rings. That's everything. Is that alright?
Of course.
It's a-okay. Kyra pulled up to the window and ordered what you asked for. She then decided to order one of everything on the value menu. Whoa, what are you gonna do with all that? Eat it.
Really?
The whole menu? That's right, there are only maybe 10 things on it, and they're about $1 each. I can swing it. And besides, whatever we don't finish, I'm gonna feed to your dad. He'll be in heaven. Cove sighed affectionately at his mother's antics. You demand a happy ending? Smirk? You naughty commentator, or commenter. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A few minutes later, Kyra exchanged her money for multiple bags of food, which she quickly tossed to you both in the back seats. She then drove off into the night. Can you pass me something? What should I grab? Surprise me. You chose one of the wrap sandwiches and handed it over to her. You had no idea if it was a burger or something else.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Accepting that this was what was happening, Cove shrugged and started pulling out food of the bags for himself. Cove ended up with some onion rings. Those are my onion rings, Cove. But we can eat them together if you want. And he happily munched on them. Well, yeah, let's grab something good. You weren't even questioning Kyra's crazy ride home anymore. The adventure continued, and you were so preoccupied in the back that you almost didn't realize that the car had stopped. Kyra turned to look over her shoulder. Okay, party people, it seems we've reached the end of the road. Confused, you checked out the window and saw nothing except empty road ahead. And then you notice it. Now leaving sign. Kyra took you through the entire town. What are we doing here? Kyra turned the car around and parked it along the side of the road. I think you both could use a break to stretch your legs, and I doubt anyone is going to come through here this time of night. Besides, I need to make a call, so go on. Cove shook his head and got out of the car without a fight. Yeah, I'm gonna stay in the car and talk to Kyra. You got out and caught up to Cove. He was busy looking at the stars and stretching his arms while he strolled around. You thought being there was exciting. You didn't care overall. You felt worried. You were mad. Being there was cool. This was a good place to stop if she was going to take us all around town. At least it wasn't done halfway. Cove smiled, glancing from the stars to you. Shortly after, you noticed Cove's expression changed. His eyebrows furrowed, and it seemed like he was thinking hard about what he wanted to say next.
I'm so sorry.
Joseph, I'm really sorry for my mom being crazy tonight. She isn't always like this, seriously. You mean she doesn't kidnap the neighbors all the time? Cove snorted briefly before becoming serious once more. I think she feels she has to get out there and do things with me while she can, and she wants to make the time memorable. This visit has been really different than the others, and it didn't start off good. Thinking about how Kyra's trip began this summer, you could understand why Cove was thinking along those lines. She probably wanted all the trouble to be worth it in the end. Are you having a good time with your mom around? Yeah, it's still weird having her and my dad in the same house, but I love her. She's my mom. I like hanging out with her, most of the time. It went silent between you both, so you jumped when you heard the sound of a car door closing. Cove, Joseph! You turned to see Kyra by the driver's side waving. The sight brought a smile to Cove's face, and she quickly made her way over to where you both were standing. Thanks for waiting. I don't mind.
My baby!
How did I end up with such a polite boy? She ruffled his hair and Cove lowered his head, accepting the compliment. You thought about how interesting it was to see how Cove interacted with his mom. And then the memory hit you. That first summer you and Cove came to this very spot in his runaway attempt to find his way back to his mom. And now you are all here together. No, I'm gonna say it out loud. Hey, Cove, this is where you went to try seeing her when you moved to Sunset Bird. Do you remember?
Huh?
What does that mean? Cove gaped at you, and it being clear that his mom hadn't known about that adventure. You came here to see me? Kyra's eyes grew large as the words fully sunk in. I heard you wanted to visit, but no one said you actually tried to do it on your own. Never mind you made it all the way through the entire town. Cove hung his head in shame. Even in the dark, there was no mistaking how red his face was burning.
Oh.
Oh, it's alright, little man. She started rubbing his back soothingly. It's definitely too late to punish you for it. I'm just glad you ended up being fine. This is an impressive distance for such a tiny guy to travel. While Kyra spoke to him positively, there still seemed to be something sad to her tone. I hope you never feel like you have to run away again.
Sorry.
I don't want to run away anymore. Don't worry. She offered him a small smile. Savage? I just thought she'd like to know. You laughed. He sighed in light exasperation. Kyra let out a big breath of air. We should probably call it a night, huh? Mm-hmm. Finally. Alright, let's go. I can't wait to collapse in bed. Kyra shyly smiled and gestured to the car. But quietly, you all made your way back to it. Cove naturally followed you, taking the seat nearby in the back with the collection of fast food bags still strewn about. You rested your head into the seat as the car roared to life. As you did, Cove leaned in close to whisper.
Hey.
I can talk to your moms if they do get mad about tonight for some reason. It was my mom's idea, you didn't have a choice. Well, it was worth it even if they get mad. Your mouth pulled into the biggest grin, getting a laugh out of Cove. If you say so. Also, don't worry about bringing the shirt back when we get home. Just keep it. Until tomorrow? He simply shook his head. Your face went warm. He was giving it to you. Secretly, you'd hope not to give it back. Good, you weren't getting it back no matter what. Let's tell the truth. Cove smiled amused at you, but said nothing else. The drive home was smooth and uneventful. The radio was off completely, and you felt your eyelids getting heavy. Your head rested on the side of the car. You came into rest on Cove. You were too tired to keep your head up, and it felt comfortable there. Cove didn't have any issues there. He leaned into it. He must have been exhausted too. You were happy to stay close like that. It was warm and comfortable. When you opened your eyes, you expected to still be in the car. Not your bedroom. It was somehow already morning. You couldn't remember how you ended up here. Did Cove carry me to my bed? As though. My Amazon mother, Ma, just picked me up with one hand and just carried me to bed. Sitting up in your bed, you thought about how last night was quite an experience. It would almost have felt like a dream if you weren't still wearing the shirt Cove had let you take. It definitely happened. And you were glad that you got to have a spontaneous escapade this summer. Well, thanks, Mom. Or I should say, Ma. Thanks, Ma. Alrighty. Alright, and then summer ended! Summer's ending, guys! Oh my god. We're gonna get such... Like, once he's 18, oh my god. I can finally start getting hot and heavy with Cove. I can stop holding back. There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Tomorrow, you were heading to class. You were excited to go back, anxiety gnawed at your stomach. It was a bummer. Summer had been so much fun. When you thought about going back to school, it was with a sense of loss. Soon you wouldn't be able to choose how your days were spent without the school bell telling you where to be and when. It was with a heavy heart that you chose your outfit for your final day of freedom. Life was going to be different. You had come to think of summer vacation as the norm. But school sucked up the majority of the year, whereas the summer vacation was just a respite in the middle. So rather than it being different, it was kind of a return to the normal. What did your normal life really mean? You considered how fondly your moms talked about their summer vacation as kids. You dimly recognized that one year the pattern of the school and summer itself would be over for good. It was hard to imagine. You'd gotten distracted, one arm still out of sleeve. You pulled it through and put your mind back to the present. This season has brought about plenty of changes on its own, like Kyra's visit, though that too was coming to an end today. You were happy you'd finally gotten the chance to know her. You're growing extremely fond. Sure, why not the first one? She was interesting to be around. You liked how easy it was to talk to her. You finished dressing, which was good. Cove would be there any moment. You'd agreed to see his mom off together. Officially, the plan was that he would come over to bring you round his house when she was ready to set off. But you both knew that you'd been hanging out for at least a little while beforehand. Kyra's visit had troubled Cove when it first happened. It had been a sudden change, thanks to Mr. Holden's infamous tendency to surprise people. But once he was able to adjust, he had been in pretty good spirits with her around. It was a relief for everyone. You turned to your desk, where the box containing your accessories resided. An anklet. Several anklets. Oh yeah, Cove likes anklets, that's right. Oh, okay. We have to wear one even though I don't want to. I don't like that, but we'll wear several. Your eyes burrowed into the box. Should you wear any for your Cove's visit today? Yeah, let's wear several. Your heart pounded as you adorned anklet after anklet. You had to make sure he noticed, and now there was no way that Cove would miss it. People from the East Coast would be able to hear you jangling. The next thought that crossed your mind was, it'd only be polite to get the door. You couldn't wait to see Cove, so you went downstairs. You knew Cove. How about I couldn't wait to see him? You bounded down the stairs, your hand gliding over the rail. You wanted to make sure you got there first. If you didn't hurry, your moms might answer it. It was only a few minutes later when the doorbell rang. As you'd chosen to stand beside it to wait for Cove, there was no delay in pulling it open. Cove was there, just as you expected. Seeing you, he flashed a bright grin.
Hey.
Hi, Joseph. It took you long enough. You only live across the street. You stuck your tongue out at him and ushered him inside, then bustled him up the stairs. Back up in your room, you sat down on your bed and waited for Cove to settle in as you knew he would. With other guests, you might have offered them a seat, but you and Cove were long past the tentative stages of friendship. Your room was as familiar to him as his own. You watched as Cove sat down in your desk chair, his preferred spot. He rolled it closer to the bed, making it easier to chat, tweaking the angle so that he was facing you fully. Once happy with the position, he leaned in towards you, hands held in his lap. His actions weren't the ones of someone who planned on moving from his spot anytime soon, even though you had an appointment to keep together that day. When is your mom leaving?
Don't worry about it.
We've got some time. She's still got to shower and stuff before she goes. She didn't want me to just keep hanging around while she was doing that. He lifted his gaze, his gaze drifting through the window, and chuckled. I can't believe she's already leaving, just when I'm getting used to her being there every day. He leaned back in the chair, a wry smile tickling his cheeks. She'll be back. He cocked his head thoughtfully before shrugging. He ran a hand through his hair before shaking his head, as if shaking off the topic like a dog whipping off water following a dip in the sea. Cove looked back to you, lips parted as if he was about to speak, but instead his eyes widened and his mouth closed into a tiny frown. Something had caught his attention. Several somethings to be accurate. It was a wonder that he hadn't heard or spotted them sooner. He cast his eyes back up to your face, then down to your ankle, and back to your face. He repeated the process once, twice more, as if struggling to hold the two items in tandem. Maybe he was weighing up whether this could be coincidence or not. If so, you weren't sure how much clearer you could be while still being able to lift your feet. Or maybe he was just too shy to verbalize his thoughts, or he was still trying to find the words, and this was the most he could manage. The attention made you feel sexy. Thrilled. You felt energized by how impactful it had been, waiting to leap up, but not wanting to break the spell the jeweler had placed on Cove. On his next glance back to your face, Cove saw your expression had shifted. You watched as his bewilderment eroded into mortification as he realized that he had been caught staring. He quickly spun in the chair to face the wall instead, allowing you to glimpse the flush that had spread all the way to his ears. He twisted in his seat, wringing his hands and determinedly avoiding looking in your direction again. It seemed that he decided against saying anything at all. Honey, I wore this all for you. Does it look good? Yeah, does it look good, honey? Cove mumbled something unintelligible as he slumped lower. With how he was hunched over, the quiet words had no chance of reaching you. You weren't going to get anything out of him in this state. You waited for him to come around before speaking again. Finally, he piped up very softly.
That's,
Did you do it because of what I said before? I mean, you know... The last few words were whispered as though they were precious secrets. The ankle bracelet. Yeah? His eyes squeezed shut. You had no idea if the answer made him feel better or more nervous. He eventually looked down at his lap, where his fingers were flexing and curling in an awkward dance of nerves. His chest rose as he breathed deep. Well, it looks good on you. Your heart skidded in your chest like a stone skipping across the water. One big leap from the unexpected compliment, followed by a series of shorter ones as you absorbed the words. You beamed at him. He was looking at you again, at last, and returned the smile shyly. This really couldn't have worked out better, you thought. And there was nothing else he could add after that. Cove's posture teetered, his eyelids blinking quickly. Joseph, I actually kind of wanted to talk about... He drew a deep breath before concluding the sentence.
I mean...
What happened on the trip? What trip? Which trip? The trip with the ankle bracelet thing? You mean when we slept together and you were next to me and I wanted to kiss you but you didn't? His voice shook as he pushed the words out. Your eyes grew at the reaction. Cove pulled his arms around his chest, his shoulders hunching inwards. You knew what he was implying, back when you had been in the loft and nearly kissed. Cove hadn't breathed a word about it since it happened, or well, almost happened.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for moving away like that when you tried to. He dropped the sentence. You didn't push for him to finish. It had conveyed what it needed. And I'm sorry for how I've been since, you know, acting like it didn't happen. I've thought about it. You were just acting like it didn't happen because I could have done those moments in any order. Oh, Cove. Oh. I mean, I haven't forgotten about it. I don't keep thinking about it all the time. He hung his red-cheeked head... he hung his red-cheeked head, forehead propped up by a couple of fingers. You could tell that he was already regretting how this was going.
Sorry.
Sorry for being weird. It's just, I kind of thought or hoped that sometime I'd be able to do this, with me talking about everything. Everything? There's more? He nodded, ever so slightly. Your face felt a little hotter after that. Cove brightened a little at your positive reaction, and his explanation continued. Well, could sort of picture how it might go. What it'd be like with you and me. But just the first part. I could never imagine anything that'd come after. And now it's actually happened. We're there. It's He took another deep breath, stuttering on the exhale.
That's,
This makes things different. Things don't have to be different. This is hard for me. Things don't have to be different. He gave you a wan smile. Thanks, but I don't think that'll work. I can't just forget. I definitely can't. His wide eyes met yours as he looked at you, less burdened from the anxiety that had built up inside of him. How about a do-over? No, come on, dude, it's fine. Come on. The word shot out reflexively. He couldn't help it, but immediately cringed at himself. Did you really mean that? No. I mean, I do. I want to. I want to try again if you still want to. You kissed him! You untangled yourself from your resting position and stood up. Realizing your intent to actually go for it, Cove straightened up in his chair, his hands coiled together in his lap. As you moved towards him, you noticed his knees knocking together as he trembled. His decision not to rise from the chair made perfect sense. If he was that shaky while sitting down, there was no way he'd manage to stand without at least one of you falling over. Your legs brushed against his quivering ones as you came to a stop in front of him. Cove was staring up at you as you leaned in towards him. He echoed the motion and drew in towards you. Once you were close enough to feel Cove's breath on your face, you closed your eyes. The last thing you saw was Cove quickly doing the same. Your lips met with Cove's for a moment. His lips were pressed tightly together, unyielding. But it was alright. You were kissing him, and he was kissing you. Let me stick my tongue in your mouth. Your stomach somersaulted. You couldn't believe it was really happening. In that moment it felt warm, it felt nice, and it felt right. You drew back and Cove slipped down into the chair, the knuckles of his hands pale after gripping so tightly. Thinking that he could do with some space to breathe, figuratively and literally, you took a step back. Cove shot up, his stance rigid. Aww, my cute little man. Ugh. You want me to slobber on your mouth again, sexy? Cove plastered a hand over his mouth, his eyes shut tight. His back became bowed, shrinking him down. You could only just make out the few words he had managed to summon.
oh my god, oh my god!
I can't believe we actually... His eyes flew open wide, but he didn't look your way, let alone meet your gaze. Aww. Cove, you better get ready, cause... you better get your back on that bed, cause we're just going a bit further today, alright? I know we're both 13, but, you know, it's not too early. His eyes flew open, but he didn't look your way. Wait, I already read that.
Oh my god!
We kissed. We kissed. You were full of nerves. Blinking, you tried to process what had happened. You laid a hand on your cheek, half wondering about pinching yourself to check that this wasn't a dream. You found your skin as hot as a car door at noon on a summer's day. Cove only slammed his eyes closed once again. Did you like it? He was still holding the hand to his face, but in an attempt to answer, he emitted a muffled whisper. This CG could also fit him into hiding from a serial killer. Oh, dude. With that obviously not working, he uncovered his face at last, bringing the hand to lay against his chest and looking at you. Yeah. He opened his mouth, poised to speak, and pursed his lips as words failed him. On his third or fourth attempt, you heard what he had to say. I did like it. I'm glad that we, you know... He swallowed, seemingly not able to speak the actual word. That we what? You know. I have no idea. Joseph. You grinned, thrilled that the experience had been a welcomed one. The smile on Cove's face was real but weary, not unlike the one he wore after a long and exhausting day at the beach. Can I finger you now? Like when he'd found a new treasure, the work had been hard, but the reward had been worth it. With some newfound confidence, He drew himself up as he inhaled deeply. Each word he spoke next was delicate.
Joseph.
I like you. A lot. Probably way too much. Dude, we know. He ducked his head bashfully and opened an eye, peeking at you through the hair that had fallen over his face like a veil. He'd managed a smile.
Thanks for waiting for me.
His eyes sparkled just looking at you, his affection transparently clear. He could never hide what he was feeling, and you couldn't be more grateful for today. I like you even more, it's true. Cove squeaked out a nervous giggle. He curled his hands into a loose fist and brushed the knuckles idly against his cheek. Words evaded him as he opened his mouth and closed it again. I don't... He gave up on finishing the sentence, instead just smiling again. He rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hands. It was an action usually reserved for much later in the day, but at this point it already felt like a long day. Cove then pressed a hand to his creased forehead.
Oh my god.
Does this mean I'm your boyfriend or something now? Should we tell our parents? I don't know what dad or mom would do. There were a lot of concerns in there. You honed in on the simplest. There was no way your moms would let you have a boyfriend. What? Are you sure? Even though that word juxtaposed with Cove's name made your heart race. What? Ma was giving us love advice all the time. Why wouldn't she let us have a boyfriend? I want you to be at least something, but I probably can't. Girl, I'm about to slap you, Joseph. I wish we were older. Girl, I don't care how old we are. I'm gonna finger you right now and dump my load inside you. I wish we were older. You didn't even know how much older you'd have to be before it was permitted. Cove lifted his hand from his chest and reached towards you, halting halfway, then slowly, cautiously hooked his fingers around yours. His palm pressed against the back of your hand. You held his hand back. You rotated your hand so that you were palm to palm with Cove, your thumbs crossing one another. Budding relationship. Achievement unlocked. We can get to work. We always figure things out sooner or later. You were temporarily struck speechless, your usual directness punctured by his honest belief in what you had together. Yeah, you're right. We're a pretty good team. Chuckling, Cove smiled at you and tightened his grip on your hands. Joseph, Cove! The sudden call from downstairs caught you both unaware. You nearly forgotten the world outside your room. From the guilty look on his face, Cove had done the same. The sudden... Oops, I just read that. Just had a call. Cove's mom is ready to go. If you're quick, she might keep the mandated motherly smothering to a minimum. You doubted that, but it was nice that Mom and Mrs. Priest had their strange sense of humor in common. Your eyes met Cove's. Wordlessly, you headed downstairs together. Each step on the way there was painfully slow, like he was trying to delay the inevitable. His whole body tensed leaving the house, and Cove froze altogether before you could cross the street.
Oh.
The door's open. Dad must be taking her stuff out. He swallowed hard. She's really gonna leave. He smiled at him reassuringly. You weren't sure what to say or how else to react other than being there to support him. Koa's bottom lip quivered as he turned away. Thanks. At that, some of the conflict warring on his face eased a bit. Together, you went across the street and inside his house, finding his parents in the living room surrounded by his mom's packed things. Hey, kids. Good timing, I just called the taxi.
Hi.
And hi, Joseph. So glad I get to see you today. It was fabulous getting to know you this summer. I finally got to put a face to the name I've heard so many times. She winked and Cove pouted on cue over the teasing. I'm happy I got to meet you too. Hopefully it won't be too long before we see each other again. Nodding, Kyra turned her attention back to her boys. She patted Cliff on the arm with a warm smile, and then she enveloped Cove in a crushing hug. Initially, Cove squirmed to break free from her grip, but his mom was unfazed and kept him locked in place. Heartbeats later, he gave in and hugged her back tightly.
I'm so glad.
And I'm so glad this trip was a success. Cliff looked like he was bursting with pride. Well, not a 100% success, but still a passing grade, I think. Thinking back on everything that happened this summer, he started to look sheepish. Cliff scratched the side of his head with an awkward chuckle. And an awkward chuckle escaped to Cove. There were ways it could have gone smoother. I'm still keeping that in mind for the future.
All right.
Good for you, Cliff, and I'll be trying harder to stay more in the loop. You watched as Cove smiled softly at both his parents, and you felt relieved seeing how much the whole family had come together since you first met them. Despite any underlying troubles, love was still there. After that, it wasn't long before the taxi arrived, rolling up in front of the house and in clear view of the open door. Kyra stood up, smiling sadly. Well, that's my ride. Yeah. The matching reply got a chuckle out of Kyra as you all filed out of the house. Father and son went with Kyra's bags in hand. Once outside, you spotted your family waiting by the street, and to your surprise, Derek was there and you sort of skipped over the dialogue. He stood uncomfortably and he waved as soon as you noticed him.
What's up?
Hey, Joseph. Hi, Cove. When did you get here? My dad dropped me off just a little bit ago. Thought I could visit one more time before school started.
Sorry.
You picked a busy time, sorry. We don't have time for you, Derek. I just kissed Joseph and now I'm trying to see my mom off. We don't have time for your tiny little boy ass. Derek couldn't even look at Cove. He nervously kept rolling a pebble with the bottom of his shoe.
Sorry.
I wasn't even thinking that your mom would be leaving today. I'm sorry, dude. What? You're not interrupting anything. You're always welcome here. It would have been sad if I didn't get to say goodbye before leaving. I think so too. It was apparent Derek would have preferred to have gotten there at a more opportune moment. He never liked seeming impolite, but the reassuring words soothed his worries. The tension he was holding in his body lessened, and he looked like he was feeling much more like himself. We're not gonna see him till step 4? Where does he go in step 3? Oh no. Bye, Derek. It was fun getting to know you. Bye, ma'am. Is there anything I can do to help?
Nah.
Nah, don't worry yourself over that. We're just about set. In that short amount of time, Cliff had gathered and packed the bags into the trunk. Kyra took one last look at everyone inside. Alright, I don't want to keep the driver waiting. It's time to head out. The whole relationship was weird. Both of them kept R-wording each other. Wait, what are we talking about? What? What? The little crowd had formed around started their chorus of farewells and well wishes traveling. But Kyra still made no move to get in the taxi. She placed her attention on Cove. I'll call when I get to the airport and when I make it to Nevada. Also, you better call the moment you walk in the door at home. Otherwise, we'll be wondering all night if you got into trouble on the way there.
Can do.
And could you call tomorrow too, so I can tell you how school went? Of course, I want to hear all about it. Kyra put her hands on Cove's head and affectionately ruffled his hair one last time. She then let go, only to move on to squeezing his cheeks in her hands instead. Mom.
Cove.
I love you so much, baby. She was chuckling by the time she freed him and rounded things off with a small tap to the tip of his nose. Cove rubbed at his face with a grin. Finally, she walked to the car while waving and took her seat in the taxi. Cliff hooked an arm around Cove's shoulder and kept him close as it began to pull away. For a moment, Cove looked up at his dad and then wrapped an arm across his back.
Bye.
Bye, Mom. Bye. Travel safe. Kyra rolled down the window and stuck her head out of it. She waved again while blowing kisses at Cove and Cliff. See you again. Before she was out of sight, you decided to call out with your family and hers. Sure. As you added your voice to the others, you watched Kyra's smile grow larger. The cab turned down another road and completely disappeared from view. Cove let go of his dad and took a few steps out into the empty street, still looking into the direction his mom went. He smiled quietly, deeply in thought. You got the impression Cove was feeling better than he was earlier. He was finally content with the way things were. You jumped a bit when your mom put a hand on your shoulder, pulling you away from your thoughts. She smiled when you looked at her. This was a great vacation, huh? I don't think so. Yeah. That's what I was hoping to hear. Cove walked back over to the group, still genuinely happy. Derek grinned at him welcomingly, and everyone else there smiled at him, even Elizabeth.
Well?
Ma clapped her hands together, bringing everyone's attention back to the present. It's almost lunchtime. I think I'll put something special together. Her eyes sparkled with a plan, and Mom smiled. I bet you could use some help with that. That'd be absolutely wonderful. Derek glanced between the two, his eyebrows furrowed. Is there something I could do? Your moms exchanged a fond expression. Ma shook her head.
How sweet.
That's very sweet, Derek, but it's alright. It's not your job. Technically, your dad left you under Cliff's watch. You're meant to be taken care of by him, not doing chores for the neighbors. Mom laughed a little over her own joke. You watched Derek look away, discouraged.
It's okay.
It's okay, I don't mind. He was a little bashful about it. He wondered if Mom's joke had reminded him that he wasn't initially meant to be invited to lunch. It was getting a little awkward. Mom grinned sympathetically. Her comment meant to lighten the mood, not bring it back down. Ma tried again to get things moving forward. Why don't you kids go have fun? You can all come back in about an hour. We'll make enough for everyone. Mom nodded in agreement.
Sounds good.
Another stunning idea, Lonnie.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That sounds like a plan then. I don't want to cramp your style. I've got stuff to work on, so I can be out of your hair this afternoon.
You should come by later too. No reason you should be the odd man out.
Mom seemed amused as Cliff rubbed his neck nervously. He grinned a wavering but pleased smile.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate the invites. He looked over the assembled crowd with knowing glances. I can help too, with as many people as you're feeding. That's going to be a lot of food. Didn't you hear what we told Derek? It wouldn't be fair to make you cook when we're the ones who are inviting you in. Ma raised an eyebrow and Cliff waved it off.
Come on.
I insist. Derek would be missing time with his pals. This would be a break for me. I'm quite the chef. Ma and Mom exchanged further glances before Mom shrugged.
True.
An airtight argument.
If you're sure, we'll be happy to have you, Chef Cliff. Cliff's grin widened and seemed more hyped than you'd expect him to be about helping with lunch. Cove shook his head, a fond smile on his face.
Then all of us grown-up people will be heading inside. I assume the rest of you kiddos are staying out.
Maybe not all of them. Ma tilted her head, a silent question for Elizabeth. Your sister thought for a moment.
All right.
I'll stay with the kids.
That's fantastic.
That's great. No, Mom, it's not great. Both of your moms smiled at her, while Derek and Cove didn't seem to appreciate her phrasing. But with the plan decided, all three parents waved and headed for your house. It was just you teenagers now. Ugh, guys, I'm gonna be making out with Cove, so like, unless you want to stay and cheer, you can go get lost. Elizabeth looked at you and at the others, a curious expression on her face.
So?
What now? You silently wondered if Elizabeth only stayed out with you to avoid getting roped into work. Elizabeth, just so you know, I'm a man now, okay? And so is Cove. We're not kids. Alright? I'm gonna be filled up with his load tonight, so just think about that, Elizabeth. Think about my dripping man pussy dripping from Cove, because that's happening tonight. Am I a little kid? Then again, she could just genuinely want to hang out. You couldn't tell with your sister. Cove spoke up after no one else did to answer Elizabeth's question. Want to go down to the shopping street? It's been a while, and I don't think there's a lot of other things we could agree on. Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Sounds awesome to me. Unlike you guys, I haven't been there 1,001 times. It's new to me. Let's do it. You strolled across the road as a group, down to the beach, and then to the left. It took less than 15 minutes to arrive. One of the conveniences is Sunset Bird. The four of you looked around at the familiar shops, trying to see if anything caught your attention this time. Derek was the most enthusiastic. He checked out every stall with his eyes wide with wonder. Elizabeth and Cove were in good spirits as well. Methinks Curl will end the stream the second this thing is over. Girl, we hope. That's so cool. He ran over to a street magician who was currently doing a card trick for a group of enchanted tourists. Derek clapped when the magician showed a middle-aged man his card. Derek turned back to the group with a curious gleam on his face. What does it take to perform here anyway? Do you have to ask somebody, or do you just show up and start doing stuff? Who would you even ask? It's a public street. Hey, Miss Mayor, can I pull a rabbit out of my hat? Please. Flopsy is well behaved, I promise. God, you're annoying, Elizabeth. Derek chuckled, his eyes searching up and down the scene.
Maybe?
Maybe there's a boss at the shopping street. No one does any of this around my neighborhood. It's just regular stores behind walls. It's different if someone wants a real store, but here I'm pretty sure people are just putting on their little shows whenever they want and do whatever. How old is Elizabeth? Old enough to not be acting like a little bee. That's so neat. Would we be allowed to do something too? Cove laughed and Derek began almost vibrating with excitement. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. You're my little vibrator, Derek? What would we do? Well, I don't know what. Not yet. I mean, I just found out it's a possibility, you know? But there's gotta be something. We know cool stuff. I'm sure if we think about it, we could plan a show that'd really get a crowd pumping. You thought it was a great idea and wanted to be part of it. Alright, let's do it. We'll humor Derek, even though, really, I just want to trade spit with Cove. Oh, yeah, we totally should. Woo.
Nice!
I knew I could count on you. Now we just need the act. It'll come to us. Right. With some amusement, the gang continued to peruse the stalls. Elizabeth found some earrings with a dangling, badly misprinted globe that everyone laughed at. Cove picked out a blob as Iceland, but Derek thought it had to be Greenland. You know, this is a world with what looks like 9 continents. I think you're both wrong. You wanted to side with Cove. You backed up Derek. I'm never agreeing with her. It looked like Iceland to me.
I know.
Right? Suddenly, Cove froze. You stared at him and then tried to see what caught his attention. When you saw a familiar face down the way, it all made sense. Between the crowds, his bright hair stood out like a neon green bowl in a kitchen sink. It was Jeremy. Jeremy slowly drifted his eyes down the street, and his eyes widened in mutual recognition. He definitely noticed you. Derek frowned and Cove tensed up. You couldn't help but remember the last time you'd seen Jeremy at Miranda's birthday party. No wonder Cove was already defensive. You stood there, shocked. Why was Jeremy here? Of all days, he could go shopping. Jeremy is the new Jamal. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Her gaze swept over Jeremy without a hint of a clue. Jeremy simply scoffed to himself and waded deeper into the crowd of people. Derek relaxed and exhaled loudly. I'm glad he's not gonna start anything. He peeked over at Elizabeth with a tiny smirk. See, that was the mean kid.
What?
Huh? She still didn't get it. The first summer day hadn't made nearly as much of an impression on her as it did for Derek, but he smiled and waved it off. Just forget about him. I already have. He laughed and Cove smiled lightly. He seemed in a much better mood now that Jeremy was gone. Your eyes wandered over to where Jeremy disappeared. You hadn't forgotten the day you met him earlier. I mean, you hadn't forgotten the day you met him either. He was only going to be in town for vacation with the parents he hated. That glimpse was probably the last time you would ever see of him. You mentioned that realization to everyone. Well, that should be the last we'll ever see of Bullcut. I bet he's about to get out of here once summer's over.
Yeah!
Guess we don't have to worry about that guy anymore. Derek kicked at a little rock in the road. It clattered forward and then rolled under a stall. But I still think it's kind of sad that Jeremy turned out to be, well, like he is. It would have been nice to make another friend. Cove shook his head. He was clearly not broken up over what might have been. Are we gonna see him in step 4? Is Jeremy gonna turn into a hot, sexy daddy? Maybe he'll become nicer in the future. Elizabeth rolled her eyes at the strange farewell to the odd boy. Not interested in the slightest. She clearly didn't understand his impact, and at this point, she didn't want to understand. Where's the Jeremy DLC? Jeremy was unlike anyone you had ever met before. You thought he was horrible. You thought he was horrible. You and the group moved on from the stall and from Jeremy. It didn't take long for everyone to return to joking. You all enjoyed what little time you had left as Elizabeth mentioned the hour was almost up. The little trip had flown by and lunch must have been waiting for you now. Derek bounced on the balls of his feet.
Okay.
Come on guys, let's get going so we can eat. I'm starving. Alright, homebound, here we go. Cove stretched one of his arms lazily. Let's go then. You looked at him appraisingly. Carry me back to the house, Cove. I know it's like a 20-minute walk, but like, come on. Hey, Cove. Yeah? Carry me home.
What?
Cove turned red, obviously flustered. You explained you wanted a piggyback. I want a piggyback ride. You're the only one big enough to give me one. Cove sighed and shook his head. Elizabeth and Derek had become a chorus of laughter. Pretty please? You jokingly pleaded with him, much to the continued amusement of the other two. Alright. Cove stepped over to you. He looked like he couldn't believe what he was doing. Your lips quirked into a large smile. Woo! I knew you'd come through for me. He carefully crouched down in front of you so that you could climb on. What are you saying? Are you saying I'm fat, Jermel? It wasn't hard to hop on. He slipped his arms under your legs and did this with his did his best to lift you. It was wobbly, but he managed to stand all the way up. Elizabeth watched with a smirk on her face while Derek laughed even harder. It was fair to say that your antics were entertaining. You were glad Cove went with it. Cove carried you home, but he seemed pretty bashful about the situation. He struggled with how to grip around you and whether or not he should try to reposition things. But along with all that, he also seemed to feel some pride to be carrying you. It was a pleasant walk home, and in no time at all, you had made it back. Derek got the front door and held it open for everyone as each of you moseyed inside. The three parents were still in the kitchen. They looked up and waved. Welcome back, everyone. You made it just in time.
Hey!
I hope you're hungry. When Cove had brought you inside, the parents couldn't help but notice the odd conveyance. Your moms weren't sure, and Mr. Holden raised an eyebrow.
Everything okay?
Did you pull something, Joseph? I'm okay.
Aw, Cove, you've gotten so strong.
Good kid.
If you think he's strong, you should see how hard he's gonna pound me tonight. And reliable too. What a guy. Cove rolled his eyes at the commentary, then started walking to your couch. He bent down and you let yourself plop back onto the couch. Thanks, Cove. I'd give it a 10 out of 10. Cove exhaled loudly and shook his arms. He just seemed relieved that he made it. So did everyone have a nice time out? She gestured for people to take a seat at the table. Plates and silverware had already been placed out. You took your normal seat. Elizabeth sat across from you, and Derek took the seat to your left. Cove sat on your right. But he blushed a little and began fidgeting with his silverware. His dad was the first to pick up on his extra awkwardness, but your moms weren't far behind. The parents shared looks at Cove's reaction. It seemed that he was struggling with how to act normal around his dad or your parents, or both, after what happened between you, the two of you upstairs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had a great time. It was fine. I had fun. Oh yeah, Cove kissed us last time, right? That's what happened. I should have mentioned that as well. I really liked it. That's good in my book. Casually, Mr. Holden sat in the empty seat across from Cove. He smiled at you and all the other kids. Mom set down a platter full of water glasses on the table. She looked down at the gathering. It's a good thing we have 8 chairs. I can't remember the last time we had a group this big over for a meal. Can you pass the drinks down to the other side? Make sure you all get one. Sure. Those close to the cups obliged and started offering waters around. As you passed Cove his drink, your hands touched. Cove froze. So gay. You had already let go, not yet realizing he was too distracted to function in that moment. The glass fell down to the table, landing with a sharp clatter of glass on wood. Cove scooted his chair back with a restrained shout.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll just, get a towel or something. He looked around in a frantic panic, as if an object to soak up the water would magically appear if he turned his head fast enough. His dad hit his lip in worry, raising from his own seat.
Well...
Cove, what's going on? You've been a little out of it today. That's because we rocked his world. Did something happen? Cove tensed, frozen again. He stared at the water on the tabletop as if he wanted to sink into it. You accidentally blurted it out? No, we're not blurting it out. No, we don't have to admit it. What? Let's just cover up for him. If something did happen, you should wait for Cove to want to talk about it. Trying to make him say things in front of everybody wouldn't be good. Mr. Holden nodded slowly. He still seemed worried, but after another look at Cove, he smiled sympathetically.
Right.
Well said, Joseph. I'm here when you're ready, son.
Of course.
Cove breathed a sigh of relief and shot you an apologetic look. You gave him an exaggerated wink when heads turned away from you. God, I love you. As everything got set up, Ma chided Elizabeth to take your elbows off the table.
Now.
And you shouldn't slouch. She pointed to Mr. Holden, who was leaning forward with both arms on the table. Girl, just let me eat. Oops. Mr. Holden seemed unsure about all the sudden attention, carefully rearranged his posture to something suitable for a fancy dinner. He smiled sheepishly at Ma. Elizabeth rolled her eyes, and Ma gave a level look at her. You shouldn't be impolite to a guest in the house, either. Elizabeth groaned, long-suffering. Ma giggled and Mr. Holden chuckled.
Not bad.
The lot of you could learn a thing or two from Derek. He has the best manners here. Derek blushed, but it was true. His posture was upright and formal. He even held his fork gracefully. His table manners, on top of all of his attempts to aid your parents, made him the model of a meal attendee behavior.
Aww.
It's nothing. Stop trying to cozy up to our Ma. She's a lesbian, you hear? You hear, Derek? It's true, though. You've been a lovely guest. I've noticed that, too. It's always nice when you stay over, Derek. Derek smiled and sat a little taller in his chair. And do you have anything good to say about our other guest? She looked deliberately at Cove with a teasing smirk. Or is there just nothing to say? Well, Cove is my number one, but he does still clean his hands by wiping them on his pants. Cove frowned at that and absent-mindedly brushed his hands on his pant legs. Your mom laughed lightly.
There.
Elizabeth, you should know after all these years, Cove is hardly a guest anymore. Cove smiled awkwardly. Thanks. Manners. Yeah, I'm gonna compliment Derek on his politeness. How about manners? Don't think I'm not seeing your elbows where they shouldn't be, Joseph. Everyone ate their meal together and continued to hang out for the afternoon. After the food, you and the others played a couple games and talked about plans for the upcoming year. The time passed by quickly and soon it was time to part ways. Mr. Holden talked to your moms and Cove drifted over to you, knowing that as soon as his dad finished up, he'd be leaving. Oh. It'd be cool to stay, but we have some stuff to do before everything closes today.
Okay.
Yeah, bye. Could you move? I need the phone. God, no one cares. Cove raised an eyebrow and Elizabeth impatiently gestured behind him. Cove realized he was standing right in front of where the receiver was placed. He sidestepped out of the way and shook his head, clearly thinking Elizabeth was rushing too much. Your sister made a beeline for the phone and started dialing the number of what you figured was one of her friends. Knowing Elizabeth, she was going to be there for a while. You, Cove, and Derek shuffled closer to the door. It seemed like Mr. Holden was wrapping up his conversation, so everyone started saying their various farewells.
Talk to you later.
See you later, Cove. We gotta do this again sometime. Yeah, see you. Cove turned to you and smiled slightly. Bye, Joseph. How about we hug him goodbye? You stepped forward and spread your arms wide. Cove only had a moment to react before you encircled him in your arms. Cove hugged you back tightly and his chest rumbled as he laughed. His cheeks were slightly red, especially when he looked over and noticed that Derek had watched the whole thing. Derek smiled amusedly.
Seriously, dude, we'll have to hang out later. I'm gonna miss you during school. He offered Cove a high five. Do they not go to the same school? Well, I mean, one of them must go to grade school, right? And the two boys clapped their hands together. Cove and his dad left soon after that. Your parents started cleaning up the house, and Elizabeth was still chatting to her friend on the phone. It was just you and Derek left. He elected to stay outside in front of the house to wait for his dad to pick him up. You decided to keep your guest company, although he was originally Cove's visitor. A light summer breeze blew through your hair, and Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot. Thanks for waiting for me. He kicked at the ground distractedly.
Well...
Dad is still gonna be a while, so do you want to go for a walk? Sounds great. One last trip for the day. The two of you walk down the street again, just wandering without a destination planned. It was a quiet stroll, too quiet for Derek being the company. You turned to him and you had noticed that he wasn't saying a word. That was unusual. Derek always had something he could chat about. You weren't sure if you should ask about it. Somehow you ended up at the old park near the beach. You glanced over to Derek once more, still expecting him to say something any second now. However, nothing came from him. In fact, now you noticed a frown creeping on his face. Derek smiled when he realized you were watching. At least his mouth was turned up. There wasn't anything that really felt happy in the expression. He turned away and the smile fell off on his face. His eyes stared intently at the ground and you raised an eyebrow. Is he moving away or something? Derek, what's going on? I am a little sad. It's just with school starting back up again, it's gonna be harder to visit. I'm gonna have homework and clubs and practices and everything else.
This sucks.
It really sucks we go to different schools. His face screwed up and his fists were closed tightly together. This was really concerning him. What if we don't have time? Well, girl, from what I hear, we won't have time. You channeled some optimism to the conversation. We'll make time. We can talk over the phone and have plans for the weekends. It'll be okay. Derek looked up at the sky. It was orange and purple with little wisps of clouds scattered around. A plane flew high with a jet stream trailing behind it. Then he turned to the ground again. Derek's face was tilted far enough down that it was harder to read his expression. Hey, Joseph. I actually wanted to talk to you about something, if you don't mind. There was a pause and you waited for him to finish his thought.
Sorry.
I was just kind of wondering, do you... my alarm is going off. Oh my god. I'm already up. Okay. I was kind of wondering, do you like guys at all? Like, would you ever want to be with someone who is a boy? Sorry if that's weird to ask. Do you not see me mouthing? Do you not see my mouth on top of Cove constantly? Because you will soon if you haven't yet. Alright. I don't want to talk about that. That'd be such a dick move when he's been a good friend to us. Be like, I don't want to talk about that. I could be with a guy. I could. More like, was there a more resolute answer? No, there wasn't. Okay, then... He hesitated before finishing his question.
So,
what I mean is, is there any guy you think is kind of cool that you like around here? Not at school or anything like that. Dude, now why you gotta make me friend zone Derek? Why you gotta make me friend zone this little child, dude? Oh my god. He ducked his head further. You already knew the answer. You'd confronted that topic this very afternoon. Girl, this is not what I'm about. This ain't what I'm here for. Come on now. Oh, from what Derek, you're gonna have to wait for your DLC to get a chance. Oh, I don't really want to say that. Wait, if I say I don't really want to say that, is that what I'm literally saying out loud?
So.
We don't want to lead him on? What? So you're saying I should tell him I like Cove? Oh my god. Fine, I'll tell him I like Cove, even though I don't want to. I don't want to say this, but I'm gonna say it. Derek chuckled and didn't look surprised at all. Okay, now I have to, now, I don't usually do this in the middle of a playthrough, but... Okay, so he's just, I think he's taking that in stride if I say it the other way. I get it, it's personal. Are you mad at me? No, okay. You just be dodging the question, rip the band-aid off. Derek chuckled and didn't look at all surprised. Yeah, you thought so. I really hope things work out. Thanks for answering my random questions. He shot you a thumbs up. Why couldn't I say, just wait for the DLC, Derek? I hope we'll always be friends, no matter what. Even if we don't see each other for a long time, or if I get really busy, I still hope. He cut himself off and met your eyes. There was something serious to him, sincerely worried that you'd fall out of friendship. I don't know what's coming. What kind of response is that? I don't know what's coming. I hope so too. I want us to be friends forever. Derek smiled, mostly to himself. He seemed a little more like the usual. Then for sure, we have to make the most of next year. Then the year after that, and the year after that. He rambled on for a little while about things. We'll just make the most of every year. Right. You smiled and felt like your friendship was still strong. You didn't spend much longer at the park after that. Derek didn't want to miss his dad, so you both made your way back to your street. After Derek went back home, you decided to settle in for the night, stretching. Derek is crying right now in his dad's car, stretching her arms over your head. You notice that the living room and the phone were free. Oh, let's talk to Lee. You picked up the receiver and quickly punched in the familiar number while going to take a seat on the couch. Soon enough, after explaining the situation to the housekeeper, Lee answered. Housekeeper? Posh, posh. Hi, Lee. Can you talk? Definitely. We practically have to. My gosh, can you believe it's almost time for school to start? What happened to our summer? School starts first thing tomorrow for me.
Boo!
Ew, and I thought starting next week was bad enough. Enjoy your last week. Oh, I will. I hope you'll survive your first day. Me too. I need a good year. Ditto. And at least summer was nice while it lasted, right? We were busy. Yeah. Fondly, you thought about all the best memories you made this summer. Lee was there for some, but there were still many you hadn't filled her in on yet. You reminisced about another moment of your summer? You moved on to talk about her? Let's reminisce. You began to speak about, Cove's mom, that time you went to Cove's house for dinner, you had to go to the library. Let's talk about the soiree, girl. That was a fun night. I went to a soiree at my mom's country club. There was lots of food and dancing and people dressed up formally.
Cool.
Oh, I've been to one of those. They're cool, but how did it go for you? Cove was my date. No way, you asked him on a date? Like on a date? Yeah. Ooh. After laughing a bit, you dove into telling Lee everything about your night with Cove. You enjoyed sharing that memory with her. Is there any other interesting memories you want to talk about? Miranda's party, nah. The road trip. Ooh, the road trip was a good one. Let's talk about the road trip, girl. I went on a vacation. Cove's parents ended up inviting my whole family on an RV road trip.
Really?
Whoa, that's awesome. It was a 3-day trip and we visited the Redwood National Forest. Lucky. It was fun hanging out with everyone. Cove was flirting with me on the trip.
What?
Cove did what? He tried to flirt. I was surprised too. I'm so happy for you. You have to keep me updated on what happens next. It was hard to focus on what she was saying. Your face was probably red right now just from thinking about what happens. Alright, we can move on and talk about her. What was your big highlight of the summer, Lee? Lee had better appreciate the tea. I'm sure she does. Talking to you was always the best part of my summer. Even though it was a phone call, you just knew that Lee was winking at you. You laughed. Alright, okay, so a high point for me was when I took that trip with my parents to Europe. That was amazing. You and Lee continued to go over your adventures until you were both yawning to each other over the phone. Before you could go, there's one other thing. I told Cove I had a crush on him today. I kissed Cove today. You knew word about what happened would get to Lee? Why would we not bring it up? Let's tell her. I kissed Cove. There was a pause of silence. Knowing your cousin, you decided to pull your ear away from the phone. As expected, a screech loud enough for you to still make out clearly from a distance crackled through the speaker. When you felt it was safe, you put the phone back against your head. Lee was still gushing to herself, though a little less loudly. Why didn't you say so sooner? He had to have kissed you back, right? You two are the most perfect pair ever. Tell me, please. You used the precious little time you had left to try filling her in as best as you were capable of in that moment. But soon the approach of curfew became too much for you to ignore, despite how excited the both of you were. At that, you decided it was time to say goodbye for now. You did have school to wake up for in the morning. Bye, Lee.
Bye.
Night, Joseph. Talk to you later. You left the phone on the side table for now. Looking at the clock on the wall, you saw that there was only about 10 minutes until your moms would be insisting you had to go to bed, so you could be rested enough for school. You stretched your legs out on the couch and sighed in defeat, watching the minute hand change 1 minute closer to bedtime. You rearranged yourself, feeling restless, and looked out the window. Startled initially, you spotted a figure out in the hills. It was Cove. Girl, what you doing? When the surprise faded, you realized it wasn't really that much of a stalk at all. It was exactly something Cove would do. You left him alone. Let's go. Ran outside to go meet with him. Strolling casually, you went out the front door. When you arrived, you noticed how many fireflies were out that night. They drifted along lazily, barely minding your presence as you waded through to reach the top of the hill. Cove turned towards you as you approached, and you noticed right away that Cove looked happy to see you. Hey, you had a bounce in your step. You weren't sure how long you'd get before your moms roped you back inside for bed. You're starting strong. Out late on the very first school night of the year. Chuckling, Cove crossed his arms. Seriously, what are you doing here?
Nothing.
Nothing. Not really. He shrugged, seeming unhappy with his own answer. You stared at him, waiting for him to continue. Well, I guess I was feeling kind of weird about this stuff. So I'm getting some fresh air before bed. You should really... I hope you feel better. You shrugged back. How about we just nod? I feel like this is a nodding moment. His mouth pulled into a bent smile. Cove let himself fall back onto his butt, and then all the way down, so he was lying on his back. He looked up at the sky. We can lay down too. Sat on his chest. That would be uncomfortable, but girl, I'll do it. He had made himself a pretty available seat with the way he was laid out. You popped yourself square in the middle of his torso. Joseph. He jolted up in surprise, though couldn't get far with you on top of him. He plopped right back into the grass. With a huff, he just gave up on being shocked. Fine. You snickered in a self-satisfied way. He had been lost in thought, or was possibly waiting for you to situate yourself, but he started speaking unprompted again. Thanks for telling me about my dad, and the money he offered you to be my friend. This was probably the last thing you were expecting out of him. Cove seemed to pick up on that and stretched his arms out wide in front of him.
I mean...
This is where we met, remember? It happened that day. You could recall the sad little boy with the pink cast you found in this very spot. It felt like a lifetime ago. I kind of have a strange feeling looking at you. Not in a bad way. Just thinking about you and then really seeing you now. It's something. He turned his face away from you. You got the impression he was trying to hide a blush. It was almost unbelievable how much of an impact he made on your life just by moving in next door. You couldn't even imagine what your days might have looked like in a world where you hadn't met him. Cove glanced back at you, waiting for a response, and you had no idea what to say. Then, still without a word from you, Cove shook his head strongly. What? It's you. Huh? He snickered before answering. He looked thoroughly amused with your reaction. That's what you do all the time, so I'm begging you. You do that all the time, so do you. You were stunned to notice. I don't do it that much. You do it all the time too. Do I? Yeah. Cove couldn't help but grin at that. Honestly, there weren't many people you could think of who could tease you about something like that. Returning his smile, you realize there's no denying that you two have been around each other for a long time. Cove broke the quiet before it could fully settle.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, see you then. With the final wave, Cove headed for home, but you stayed there a few minutes longer. Your mind kept going back to a simple statement, see you tomorrow. No matter how much was changing around you, there were some things in your life that always seemed to remain true. The hills felt warm to you that night. Before you knew it, you were getting comfortable under the covers in your room. Your mind couldn't help but still be buzzing with thoughts about the future. It was hard not to think about Cove. There hadn't been enough time to really figure it all out after what happened between you. You felt excited, nervous, unsure. Excited. There was a little doubt in your mind that things are moving forward and you couldn't wait to find out what changes were waiting for you on the horizon. Slowly, your eyes grew heavy as you drifted off to sleep, your mind spinning with wishful thoughts. No matter what happened next, you could only hope that she would make the most of it. You were ensnared in a dream when a noise from the outside world jostled you. Your eyes snapped open. Yeah, eyes snapped open. The light clatter continued. Now that you were more alert, you could distinguish it as a tapping sound. Quiet, slow, but persistent. Each beat was like being poked. You couldn't ignore it. You lifted your head from the pillow and looked for the source. Not much work was needed to puzzle it out. It was from the window. With that, you knew exactly what it was. From the color of the light filtering into your room, it was too early for anyone to be awake, including the sun. It had barely hauled itself over the horizon, but that didn't stop some people, it seems. You sat up in bed and opened the window wide. Cool air not yet warmed by the day tickled your face as it pushed into your room. And just as you expected, there was your neighbor crouching on the windowsill. He was fully dressed, though not for school. Damn. Oh, my love. Oh, my love. What were you doing? Were you out swimming, sis? What's going on? He was wearing a wetsuit and a shy smile. Oh, are you planning to get wet over here with me?
Joseph.
Yes, Cove. You stared back, blinking. So technically, we won't be back to school for a few more hours. His voice was delicate, yet deliberate, each word a careful explanation. Classes haven't actually started yet, so do you want to hit the beach with me one more time this summer? Always, girl, let's go. His smile widened affectionately. You rushed to get changed into something suitable while Cove climbed back down to ground level. Your limbs, still half asleep, struggled somewhat as you attempted to coordinate them into a swimsuit, but you got there in the end. Soon you were tiptoeing out the front door, clutching a towel. Cove was already there to greet you. Your eyes met. Cove's gaze darted to your destination and back to you. You checked the door was closed, gave him a thumbs up, and the two of you leapt into action. Wordlessly, you began to run down the familiar path ahead, Cove beside you. The thrill of your illicit outing made you want to laugh. Not that you dared. If anyone in your family looked out and saw you, then your summer would be back to being over. One glance at Cove told you that he was exactly the same, holding back snickers for fear of being heard and caught. The towel streamed out from under your arm like a cape. You were not running so fast downhill that simply keeping your balance and not tumbling down was a real threat. It just wasn't enough of one to make you slow your pace. Wait, I might have read that weird. For every step you took, the beach was a little closer and the day a little brighter. What lay ahead for you would arrive, and you were happy to meet it. Aww. I guess that's the end of step 2.